Hello and welcome to this evening's workshop. This is the first workshop of a two-part workshop, the Sacred Service Life Cycle. My name is Kia West. I am an intuitive story strategist, and it is my absolute privilege to have you here. For those of you who are live and will be catching the recording, it is such an honor and a privilege to be transferring this knowledge with you. So I have prepared some slides to support the transfer of this knowledge. It is, as a visual learner, that is something that I find very helpful in my processing. So they are prepared now. I will just share my screen with you. We can get started. So I'm going to move you here, click present. I'm going to shuffle some things on my screen. Sacred Service Life Cycle Workshop 1. As I said, this is a two-part workshop this evening, or this workshop is specifically around the life cycle, the elements and the archetype of the life cycle, which we will unpack together during our time in this workshop. So a couple of housekeeping things first. Making sure you have some water. The way that I work is very much on the energetic level as much as it is on the conscious level. And so with that, this is a transfer of knowledge that will be impacting you on a energetic level. And so in order to support this exchange, it is important that you stay hydrated, to keep energy moving, to keep everything flowing, and to keep that process smooth and flowful. Making sure you have a pen and paper and the resource that if you haven't printed that off, it's okay for you to draw some circles on the page now. There's 5 circles, 1 in the middle, and then 4 either side of that. And we will be using this throughout the training today. Now, also having an open heart and open mind, staying open to what you receive, and be conscious of what you're resonating with, what is already information that you perhaps already on some level knew, and anything else that you might be opening to as new information. The best way to really receive that is with an open heart and mind. And in just a moment, we will be doing a practice to really support you in that opening process. And stay curious and reflective. This information, while you will perhaps mostly be receiving it intellectually as far as you are cognizant of, there will be elements of it that will spark inside of you, and you may have physical sensations for that. You may have tinglings throughout the body, or warmth, or you may just have part of your intuitive receptors activated. So stay curious to how this information receives within you. And one of the ways that I'm really passionate about teaching, as far as my role as a teacher, is reflection and staying aware to what is what this exchange, how this is impacting you, having these reflective processes throughout. What does this mean for me, and how can I apply this? How did I already know this? And this is a practice that throughout this process, I invite you to explore in your own way. So let's move into the practice now that is really going to support you in opening to receive this information. So if it is safe for you to do so, I invite you now to close down your eyes and begin to deepen your breath, breathing in through the nose, filling your belly as much as possible, holding at the top. Noticing any tension being stored in your body. As you exhale out through the mouth with an audible sigh now, feel all that has brought you to this point in your day being expelled through your breath. Allowing yourself to maintain an extended breath now with the exhale longer than the inhale. So breathing in for 4 counts, then exhaling for 6 counts. And in this process, we are allowing our breath to be the vehicle that drops us out of high beta brainwave state, out of the analytical mind, the monkey brain, and descending into a primed state of alpha, brainwave state that opens us, increases our attention to the subtleties that we are opening to, enhancing our connection with creativity. And we're just going to linger here in this moment with our breath, feeling each inhale and exhale, supporting us to drop even more into the intelligence of our heart. Allowing your breath to return to its own natural rhythm now. And bring 2 fingers or the palm of your hand to the center of your chest. Noticing how this physical touch, the center, ignites and activates a knowing, feeling, a hearing, or a seeing of a spark of light at the center of your chest. And as you focus your attention on this light that resides within your heart, notice how it begins to grow, expanding effortlessly outwards so that it fills your entire physical body. And with each breath, this light continues to expand, moving out through all the layers of your consciousness, so that it fills the entire space around you. Filling all of the nooks and crannies in the room in which you sit with your golden light. Until this light grows. With each breath in and out. Notice now how the light of your consciousness has expanded to encompass your entire home, bathing all those within your space, people, animals, plants, everything inside of this field bathed by your light. And as you breathe in and out, your light grows further still, sweeping down your street, weaving in and out of the roads, filling the entire suburb, and then the whole state. Your light bathing your entire state. As you still maintain your focused attention upon this light, notice how eager it is to encircle your entire country and all those within your field being blessed for your willingness to open and expand the light of your heart's consciousness. And you hold this beautiful, radiant light, it grows further still, expanding now to encircle the whole planet, so that every single organism is held in your light. As you breathe in and out, allow yourself to immerse yourself within this space of openness, of expansion, of reception. And from this space, we set our intention now. Let it be that this transfer of knowledge you are here to receive today supports you in the opening and expansion of this knowledge. May it be anchored within you and support you in expanding a flowful, balanced, sacred service. That from this learning, this teaching, your integration will support you and all those whom you serve to live life to the fullest, to experience life in the fullness of its innate, organic, cosmic, everlasting cycle. May it support you and those whom you serve. Know who and what you are, and to embody and integrate with your fullest expression. And so it is. And it is so. Taking in a deep breath now and gently lower your hand to your lap. And as you exhale, bring some gentle movement back to your body. When you are ready, blink open your eyes and welcome back. So we are going to hit the next. There we go. My little bubble over here, or my square rather. Okay, so what we are going to be exploring this evening is the Sacred Service Life Cycle as an assessment tool. So this is something that I would love for you to play with and experiment with and to use as a way to remain in a balanced and flowful cycle within the way that you show up in your sacred service. And we'll explore the way that you can apply this tool in a macro sense as well as a micro sense. Now, in order for you to really understand the nature of this cycle, we are going to be exploring archetypes and archetypal sight and how this translates in what we are learning here this evening. Now, we will be exploring archetypal sight through the light and shadow aspect. We will unpack the 4 phases identified in this cycle. And after we have explored the archetypes of each of those phases, we will then have a look at how you can use this cycle as a lens to really observe and assess where you are in your sacred service, how you are showing up in your sacred service. And then at the end of this teaching, we will do a praxis so that you can apply what you will learn inside of this session. The way that I like to teach is with an integrative model where it's not just, you know, an overload of intellectual understanding. It is actually giving you an applied practice so that what you learn is then enhanced by, you know, neurons and synapses firing and connecting, much like a muscle, so that you can really feel its potency. You can really feel how it actually works within you. And then you'll be offered an integration practice, a way to continue to work with this so that you can really experience the benefit of how this tool can support you in your sacred service. And then at the end of the teaching, I do have a live offer that I have at the moment. So I will be sharing with you the details and how you can participate and how you can apply for that. Remembering that for those of you who are attending live or going to be catching the recording, there are bonuses that are available to you for you to take up if that is something that you are called to do. So let's get started. Let's begin by first understanding how it is that you can fully use this life cycle as a practice, as an assessment tool. So when we are in sacred service, we are inside of this, we have this life cycle happening, and this, again, is the archetype, which we'll explore shortly. But the way that you can use this archetypal lens is by first identifying or, you know, pausing to then identify from a macro lens. Now, what that means is by having to look at the all status or position or where your sacred service actually is as a whole item, as a whole entity or being. And you can also use this cycle to assess offers. If you have a particular service or a product, you can apply this cycle to assess every single part of how you are in service. You can use this lens to look at strategy or particular actions that you are taking in your service and experiences that you are having in your service. And the whole process and the whole point of it is to really see where you are stuck, where you are out of balance, where you are experiencing stagnation in your service. Because where there is stagnation, where you are stuck, there isn't that full cyclical and balanced flow occurring, and we can find ourselves experiencing stress and overwhelm and creating results that don't align with what it is that we actually want to be creating. This tool is a way for us to be the sovereign author of the what we are creating from our sacred service. Myself being a story strategist, you may notice that throughout this presentation, I may use language that relates mostly to that writing or storytelling field, but allow yourself to open to what that actually means for you if you're not necessarily in that storytelling realm. I'm very much an archetypal linguist, so you'll be able to receive your interpretation, again, based off of how it resonates for you. So stay open and curious and reflective of that. So what we're doing here when we are using this as an assessment tool, we are being the sovereign author. We are recognizing that we are we create our reality, and we do not need anything outside of us or external from us to be able to bring ourselves back into alignment or bring ourselves back into flow and balance. And so our work then is to become this sovereign author. It is to become secure and trust, and to be able to trust in who and what we are. Now, my work as an intuitive story strategist is to really, the way that I support my clients is to train their intuitive intelligence, as well as how to use that intuitive intelligence to craft their sacred service. And I'm doing that from the level of energy and practical. Now, intuitive intelligence is where we are using and applying our innate intuition with our spiritual self-esteem, which is which is a really fun way to describe trust. We are trusting what our intuition is telling us. And so where we are not able to trust ourselves is generally where we are being called in to develop that skill, to be able to see exactly how this relates into our sacred service. And so when we are using this tool, when we are applying ourselves with the assessment of our sacred service, whether it is on the macro, on the whole, or any other micro element within that service, what we are doing is we are using our intuitive intelligence to be able to assess this. And then we are using our storytelling to recreate or rewrite the experience that we're having. We're coming into alignment and restoring that flow and balance. And this is something that I encourage you to use and practice every single day as a way to really, if that's something that you are cultivating as a daily practice, every single morning when you show up in sacred service, you are already in that organic and natural flowful state. So let's explore now archetypes, because this is probably going to make a little bit more sense, especially if it's something that you aren't familiar with. Now, archetypes, as we understand it, is a pattern. It's a pattern of behavior. It's a pattern of experiences, but more specifically with the way that I teach it, it's a pattern of energy. So archetypes are across the board of industries that help us to understand our psyche, that help us to understand the experiences that we have. They exist in psychology and philosophy, in the intuitive sciences, in storytelling, and what really the power that comes from that, the power that comes from being able to see with archetypal sight or symbolic sight, is that we're moving into a place where we're not taking things personally. So instead of, when we are experiencing, an archetypal pattern, say, for example, we are stressed to the brim in our business, that is something that we can archetypally observe as from anyone who is in business or in sacred service to experience at some point or another. We can then begin to unravel where it is that we are, or what archetype we are in that is contributing to this stress. Now, the other superpower that happens when we are seeing through an archetypal lens or symbolic sight is we are detaching from that experience. We're detaching from, oh, I'm so stressed. My workload is so much and I'm getting nothing for it. Everything that I do is futile. Like, it doesn't matter what I do, all of the things that I do, and I'm not getting anything back from it. When we choose to look at that and assess and observe this particular experience through archetypal sight, we are detaching and we are able to observe it from an impartial and impersonal perspective. We aren't in a victim consciousness. We aren't in this place of, woe is me. We are able to actually emotionally detach from it and then see the broader spectrum of what is occurring. We're able to expand the scope of what we are able to see. And from that, we are able to then look at solutions. Now, what I want to share with you here is and relates to our brainwave state. So what happens when we're in this detached state? We're in our high beta brainwave state. And this is the brainwave state when we are in overwhelm, we're in stress or anxiety, or, all of those different feeling states that when our nervous system is heightened. And what's occurring is because our nervous system is heightened, it's responding and reacting. And so we have, a saber-toothed tiger hunting us, and we're in constant fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, looking for the danger. And while we're in that state, all we can see is a tunnel vision on the thing that we are most afraid of. And when we are in this state, we cannot see any other solutions because we only have one track mindset. We only have one track perspective, which is, I'm not getting results, or I'm not getting back what I'm putting in. And so while we're in this state, while we are in this stagnation, what we are missing is solutions. We're missing opportunities. We aren't able to see anything because we're out of any other option out of it because we're here. And so when we are making the choice to see this as an archetypal piece of intelligence, we then begin to shift our perspective so that we can see the whole scope. And from that wholeness, then we can see, okay, so this is why I'm feeling this here, but there's also this here that while I was stuck here, I couldn't see that. And that was intelligence that I couldn't take action on. I couldn't attune myself to that solution or to that behavior that is actually really contributing to why there's no results. Maybe the pulling and the to and froing, or not consistently showing up, or whatever it is that you can only see when you have opened yourself and allowed yourself to detach to see the fullness of what is actually going on. Now, when we are exploring and looking through the archetypal side, what we are doing again is we are using our intuitive intelligence, because we're and the way that we're seeing is through universal sight. And this can only occur when we are accessing and harnessing our intuitive intelligence, remembering that intuition is innate. It is not something that only special people have. Every single person on the planet is intuitive. The intelligence that we are wanting to rope into this is our ability to say, I trust this. Our ability to say, okay, I'm detached from this. I have the full universal scope and sight of what's occurring. And I can see that this particular experience where I'm not getting results is because actually I'm only half-assing. And we receive this intelligence, but then we trust it. We trust that universal insight that has been provided to us. Now, archetypes, through the way that I teach it, have both light and shadow aspects. Everything has a light and shadow aspect. And it's important for us to understand this, because what we are going to be learning shortly with the next slide is how we are generally driven to really only focus on the light. And so the shadow element is where, we tend to hide from. Societally, we've been conditioned that the shadow is yucky, it's ugly, it's shameful. Sweep that shit under the rug. Nobody wants to see that shit. But while the shadow lingers unseen, it festers and it becomes this agitating experience. So let's move over to the next slide now. Now, they are omnipresent. Light and shadow qualities are omnipresent. They are in all things, especially when we are talking from the archetypal language. An archetype being a pattern, we can see archetypes literally everywhere, and everything that we can observe as a pattern or as an archetype is going to have both light qualities and shadow qualities. Now, the important thing that I really want to highlight here is that these qualities are non-dual. They are not separate. We have this belief in dualism that is really causing harm to this whole idea of positive and negative. They're actually this one and the same. They are whole. In fact, the only thing that makes light and shadows perceptually good or bad is our judgment. It's the belief that we say the light is good, the shadow is bad, and we're really just judging the two. And in doing that, we're causing separation, and we are in separation. I'm not going to go too much into the laws of the cosmos today, but there is universal laws that I teach, that really inform us that there is actually nothing that separates anything. And the biggest task of those in sacred service is to really stand in that and own and embody that as their truth and the way that we serve. But that's for another workshop. So where these qualities are non-dual, what we're wanting to, how I want to introduce to you a way that you can see these qualities is not as something good and bad, not as something to judge as, I don't want to be in my shadow. I don't want to be, I only want to be in the light. What I want for you to see and how I want for you to see these is that our light qualities are a way for us to inspire and be inspired. And our shadow qualities are a way for us to transform. And both of these are necessary and relevant. We can't bypass our transformation by trying to always be inspirational. It just doesn't work. We are probably far off in a whole new type of shadow when we are stuck there. And in fact, we see so much of this pattern of behavior, this archetype where people are so afraid to be in transformation state, to be in reflection of their shadow, and it's causing significant harm. It's causing massive, it's incredibly detrimental, in the spiritual world and in the whole world, right? There is this toxic way that we are so afraid to just be in our shadow and own our shadow and love our shadow. What we're learning here is to see both and to be willing to look at both, even if the shadow does appear ugly and gruesome and terrifying. What we do when we become a friend with our shadow, when we see that our shadow is actually a friendly ally, is that we are embracing our full capacity to transform. We are embracing our full capacity and power and sovereignty. We cannot be powerful while our shadow is unmet, while we have unmet subconscious stories, while we have these patterns that are these archetypal patterns, these archetypal stories that are lingering in the darkness, because what they will do until we look at them is become so loud that we have nowhere else to look. That's generally where we are when we are finding ourselves in a place of stuckness, of stagnation, and these shadows become so loud, they scream at us that we just almost want to just throw it in. And a lot of people do. They will just throw in the bag and give up instead of just being willing and fearless in braving the dark to see what is actually in there, what is actually inside of that basement that is just wanting to be set free, that is just wanting to transform. And in fact, it is from that shadow space that we find our most powerful gifts. That's where we find the gold. And there's something, this really powerful part of my work in every single way, that we are becoming to really reclaim ourselves by going in and seeing what inside of our shadow needs to be transformed. In doing this, what we are doing is shifting our perspective. The only way that we can change the world is by shifting the way that we see the world. When we do that, when we shift our perspective, when we shift the way that we see the world, we shift the world that we experience. We shift our reality. So, have a drink of water. Now let's move in to the 4 phases. We're going to be looking again at these phases as archetypes and exploring both their light qualities and their shadow qualities. So taking up your piece of paper now and pick one of the circles. I've got this one here as the conception phase. It really doesn't matter. And in this inner circle, write down conception. Now, it doesn't matter where you place these, but the way that I've done this is I've put a plus sign and a negative sign. And so what I'd like for you to do is just, as I would talk about these phases and their light and shadow qualities, write down any that resonate for you and maybe underline any that stand out as, yes, that's where I am right now. So let's look at the first phase of this cycle, the conception phase. The conception phase and the light quality specifically are that feeling and experience of new life, much like, you know, if you are expecting a parent or an expecting parent, you've just found out you're pregnant and you've got this new life growing inside of you. This is an archetypal pattern that exists within this cycle in relation to your sacred service. So you might have a new business idea. There's this swirling excitement of possibility that is building in you, much like a new baby. And there's this sense of wonderment and curiosity, excitement, euphoria, inspiration, and there's this sense of something igniting in you. And the way that this shows up is very much in the creation of something new. Maybe it's a new idea that is exciting, and it's something that you're the possibility of how you can develop this and be of service with this is so, it presents this feeling of euphoria and bliss. These are the ways that we experience this conception phase in our sacred service. Now, let's have a look at the shadow, because where we're experiencing these light qualities, we are also feeling these shadow aspects. Now, there is this uncertainty that comes with conception. Will it make it to full term? It's a formless collection of cells or ideas or thought patterns, but how is it going to actually solidify and ground? It's not guaranteed, right? How many ideas have you had that you have been so excited about, but then they've just fizzled out? Like, there's no certainty that it's actually going to make it to being birthed and completing a full cycle. There is this scrambledness, like you have like the inkling of an idea, but there's so many other like thoughts and ideas contributing to it that it's really like it's a jumbled mess, and it's really hard to pinpoint where to start, what to do, like what's required, how can I bring this to life, how can I piece all of these puzzle pieces together. It is exactly like opening up a brand new puzzle, and all of the parts are in pieces, and it can be overwhelming when you're looking at a unformed puzzle piece or a puzzle. And then that whole experience is chaotic. Like, there is all of these swirling ideas, as I like to call it, because I'm very good at the conception phase. All of those swirling ideas become a chaotic mess inside of your head. And a lot of the time when we're in this shadow state, that's where we're like, it's too hard, I'm going to give up. It's just, it's too much. I don't know. I don't want to do this. It's just too much. The chaos is too overwhelming. It's not for me. There's also this element of the unknown. And, really the way that I saw this so clearly was like, that unknown when you are carrying a baby and you're like, what are they going to look like? What if something goes wrong? Like, you have all of these doubts and things that come through when you are in that pregnancy stage, that conception phase. And that applies here too in our sacred service. When we've got that idea and you actually maybe have made some logical processing to maybe bring it to life, but there's still the unknown. How are people going to receive this? How are people going to resonate with this? Is it actually going to be of service? Is it going to be how it exists in my imagination? Like there's so much unknown embodied within this archetype. And a lot of the time, the reason that I put that in this shadow as a shadow quality is because a lot of the time people will run away from that because it is too unknown. I have no control if it's not known. So I'm just going to scratch it and pretend it never happened. Now, again, just considering and reflecting and being curious about how and where these qualities are perhaps making sense for you, and remembering that you can apply these on the overall, the macro sense of your sacred service, or specifically on a particular offer or a particular idea or particular strategies or actions that you are taking in your sacred service. So the next phase is the birth phase. So it's conceived to full term. You have officially birthed this new life, this new baby, whether that is a new offer or a new business or a new strategy or a new way that you are going to take action in your service. And how we can consider the light qualities of this phase is it's like an emergence, right? You are emerging. There is something that is emerging from you. It's emerging from your imagination, from where it was first conceived as an idea, and the series of steps and processes and workflows that have contributed to being ready, a full-term something, product, offer, service, ready to emerge into the world. And what comes in this phase is this feeling of like, it's like a gift, right? This new life is my gift. It's my gift to me, from me to the world. And it's always a pinnacle moment, right? Everything changes when you finally have that new baby. Everything changes when you have brought to life what once existed within you as a conception. And from this birth phase, what was something inside of you, it's now emerging as something that is going to take on its own life. And there is this celebration that comes, there is this sense of accomplishment when you finally push it out, the placenta and all, it comes out, this new life, and this sense of accomplishment washes over you until they start screaming and your nipples are hurting, because that's also part of this birth phase. But that initial relief that comes when it is out in the world and you are that proud parent, and just doting on your creation and really reveling in yourself for being able to do that. That phase doesn't necessarily, I think that varies the length of time that people will spend in that self-recognition, like, yeah, I did that. I think that varies significantly depending on how the experience is, but it is there is this that experience that we will have. There is also, I noted here, a primal power, because I wanted to really recognize that when we are in this phase, whether it is literally birthing a baby or archetypally, what we tap into as an archetypal mother, it's primal, right? You get to the point when, you're 10 centimeters dilated and you just know that this baby's coming out. Like that's just, if there's nothing that can, there's no negotiations, or one way or another, it's coming out. And what we draw from when we are at that stage, it's primal. Like you switch into this powerful vessel, this powerful channel that is here to birth the cosmos into the world through your womb. And again, applying this through as an archetypal expression, as well as you can see the transfer from it literally, but more specifically, from an archetypal expression, that is when, you know what, you get to this phase with this idea that you've been conceiving, and you just know that it's going to be birthed into the world. And you really tap into this pure source of cosmic energy to really support you in that birthing phase. But with the birth phase, of course, there is shadow aspects that we are going to meet with. The birthing process is laborsome, literally. You work hard to bring this life, this new life, into the world. And it's exhausting. It can be painful. It can be isolating. When you're in that room, in the hospital room, like you're the one that's got to push it out, right? And that can be really isolating, that sense that this is the baby that I'm birthing into the world, the service that I'm birthing into the world. It can feel really isolating when you're at that stage where it's time to birth it into the world. There is this dissolution that occurs. We are dissolving all that we were up until this point. And with that comes a lot of identity. These are really potent shadows that, while they are, I think, incredibly useful to apply to the sacred service, these are parts of the shadow of birth that I don't think are spoken up about enough. Specifically, also, as a mother entering into the world with a new baby, the loss of identity is not something that we are taught when we are actually giving birth to a baby, and we aren't taught it either when we are birthing something from our sacred service. We are moving away from, who we are with no children, and now we have children, or who we are without this particular offer or product, to this person with this offer and product. And with that, it can be disorientating. It can cause us to just have this experience like, who am I now? I don't know who I am anymore. And so I think it's really important that we understand that this is part of the cycle. Expectations are a huge one. How many women or mothers have you heard about, they didn't have the birth that they wanted. They didn't have the drug-free, or they didn't have, something happen, or even the worst case scenario, they experienced something that is really, with loss, like actual loss of a baby. And all of these expectations that we have in this process, they show up in a way that really, where, especially in this phase of birth, we would rather be in control. We would rather have all of our expectations met. And when they aren't met, it can be soul crushing. It can absolutely destroy us. And so it is, I think, important for us to bring that into this conversation, because where we hold these expectations for what it is that we are birthing in the world, we are much more susceptible to becoming into that place of tunnel visioned and not being able to see the outcome. So it's something to really be aware of and be conscious of, so that you can recognize, okay, actually, yeah, I had some expectations of how this was going to go, and it didn't happen. Nobody liked my baby, and now I can't see any other solutions. But by having this consciousness and being like, okay, actually, yeah, that is what happened. All of a sudden, you're seeing archetypally, and you can see nobody liked it because maybe I was using the wrong language, or I hadn't yet fully formed this idea that I had been conceiving. It might have been a premature birth. And these are all ways that we can use to shift our perspective, shift the way we see the world, shift the way we see our business, or whatever it is that we're birthing, to then restore that innate natural flow. Now, the next phase is the life phase. The life phase, in its life form, is where we are getting to fully experience what it is that we have birthed. We are able to explore it and go on adventures with it. We are able to really integrate with what we have created, with what we have birthed. But in that, when we are fully opening ourselves to being the full experience and the full expression of it, we are fully present with it. we are able to really revel in the magic and wonder that life is, the mystery of life is. There's no clear-cut pathway in life. It is kind of like a Goosebumps novel where, or a pick your own ending, and you literally like, you can take this step on this pathway, which then leads to all of these different pathways, and you're constantly weaving through life as an experiential mystery. And it's a pathway, sorry, the phase of harvest. It's where, the seeds that we've sown, they've sprouted, they've grown, we've nourished them, we've watered them, we've nurtured them, and now they're providing fruits. Now we're getting to experience and eat the fruits off of the birth, what it is that we've birthed. And it's a phase that I have absolutely struggled with the most. Natural conceiver, a natural birth machine, literally. And the life phase is where I struggle the most. That is because of the shadow aspects that I was unable to see. Now, in the life phase, that's where we experience those disappointments. That's where we experience conflicts. We experience drama, turbulence, especially in the way that our world is today. Everything is so fast paced, it's hard to keep up. The days are just going by so fast now that this energy of turbulence means like you're just constantly scattered, like, where do I go? What do I do? Then there's this element of avoidance, right? Where perhaps the creations that we've birthed aren't quite what we wanted, or they're not, whatever the story might be, but we're not willing to actually sit with that and be present with that. So we choose to avoid it. We distract ourselves. We look for other shiny objects, or we numb ourselves in our addictions and to stories that we get stuck in and aren't able to see out of, again in that tunnel vision. And it's that place where we stumble, right? Think about a child who's learning to walk. Like the stumbling process is necessary, but while we're in that shadow phase, we just get so victimized by our falling over that we can get stuck there. So again, become aware and notice where, any qualities that you're like, yep, I can relate to that. I feel a tug there. Because what we do when we bring awareness and consciousness to these particular shadow qualities, then what we're doing is we're doing that opening process where we're zooming out from that tunnel vision and able to see beyond, see that full scope, and see where it is that we are contributing to our stumbling, to these distractions, to these avoidances, behaviors. And then we have the death phase. Now, the death phase in its light form. I just want to mention here as well, this was actually the hardest phase to really to birth, to conceive, and to actually bring to life. And for those for the women who have attended this workshop before, it was interesting for them to really notice how there was almost like a distance for them to really draw out the qualities that they recognize in this life phase. So at that death phase, we come into a place of recognition. Consider somebody that you know who has transitioned. And there is this phase where you sit and they are recognized, they are celebrated for what they have done in the world, the impact that they've made in the world, everything that they have accomplished. That is the time when people are really honored and recognized for their contribution to being on this planet. It is a reflective stage. It's a phase. It's where, people may find themselves a bit stunned, and their reaction, there's that shock factor. But then, coming out of that shock factor is it causes people to reflect upon the person, but then also reflect on themselves and how this loss has contributed to them, or how it is actively contributing to them, reflecting on how the interactions with the person who has transitioned, how that has impacted them. What can they learn? That's ultimately what reflection is to me. It's this learning process. It's really seeing what has happened, what's transpired, what has been learned, what has been gained, what was something, reflecting and learning on the things that weren't so pleasant, weren't so enjoyable, but still provided valuable lessons. And it is the teaching phase. It's where, you look backwards, you look over a person's life, again, using this as an archetype. You look over someone's life who has transitioned, and you can see how, by their own behaviors, by their own experiences, now that they have transitioned, how much that actually teaches us, what we can actually learn from their existence that really doesn't have as much significance until they've transitioned. There is this element of surrender when we are coming into this phase. Once someone has transitioned, they can't come back, right? And for us, our role is to be able to surrender into that phase, into this experience, surrender our attachments to what we know and how we knew it to be, and surrender our into whatever that requires of us. Surrender is quite broad, so that surrender might be an acceptance of what is. That surrender might be opening to fully feel it, feel the expression of it, feel everything that is, coming and cultivating as a result of this death. It is boundless. It's when, as from the experience, as if as the person who has transitioned on, they are no longer bound in their physical form. They are released into that immaterial expression of themselves. They are not limited in the physicality of this world. They have become all things at all times. At all times, they are no longer bound here through this physical plane. And there is this freedom that comes in this boundless state that we enter into in death. And of course, evolution. Evolution being that what dies is born again in a new. What dies provides nutrients and sustenance to new life. Consider, like what occurs when there's a wildfire, right? It can wipe out entire forests, but the ashes and the coals and everything that is left behind supports new growth. It nourishes and enriches the soil to provide and provoke and ignite new forests to grow stronger, taller, more equipped, more enriched. There is this beautiful process of evolution that occurs in the death phase, and the way that we apply this, excuse my cat. You're right, mate. Hey. The way that we apply this to the language of our sacred service is that we may have to kill off some darlings. We might have a service that reaches its life, and it in order for us to move out of that phase of where we can get stuck, which we'll talk to the shadows in just a moment, when we what we do when we are bringing ourselves to the end of a particular service or offer or product, we apply all of these light qualities to then bring a new evolution into what comes next, into the new life that comes next. So the shadow phase, which I have called death, the shadow phase of death is grief, right? It's especially when there's full grief is a natural part of the death phase where we are mourning. We're mourning from what we have lost. We are mourning from what we have known. We are mourning from and grieving this sense of who and what we were now not being there. And we can become detached, when it's difficult to let go of our loved ones or let go of the things that are moving through this full cycle. These attachments we can get stuck there. We can get frozen in time. We can get frozen in that tunnel vision. And these stories we can get bound in for lifetimes. And what we're doing when we bring awareness to this is we are, again, looking how we can detach from that. This death phase can be destructive. It can be catastrophic. It can be chaotic. There's regret. There's all of the ideas and doubts and shame and all the full spectrum of emotions that we feel in this phase come to the surface. It's painful. It literally feels like your heart is being torn in two and like you might never survive it. And again, it's primal, much like the birth phase. And I think it's really a powerful place to place that primal experience, because that it's a rawness that cannot be avoided. When we do avoid it, it causes more harm. And so for us to really embody the fullest expression of this phase is to allow that primal, raw expression of this phase to live, to be experienced. I don't know if you've ever been to a Maori funeral, or you call it tangi, but this, what happens there is, inside of that process, we will all have the deceased loved one inside of our traditional meeting house, the marae, and that gives everyone the opportunity to come and fully express their mourning in a way that is primal. People weep and scream and cry, and there is nothing that contains it, right? It can be a really a powerful experience, especially when you're witnessing it, when you're witnessing people coming to fully experience the death of their loved one, and there's no suppression. Like, it's just this full wailing experience where they are allowing the death phase to move wholly through them. And it's so important, and I really value this part of the process, because even though it can be scary, even though feeling those primal raw emotions can be terrifying, both as the experiencer and somebody who might witness it, it is so part of us, and a lot of what we have lost. And I'm really passionate about this because I see it so much in our society, specifically in our men, where they aren't able to experience their primal expression. And so that is suppressed within them. And that keeps them stuck in this phase of grief, of mourning, of attachment, of destructive behaviors, breaking down relationships, and whole another workshop, but a whole multitude of ways when we avoid this shadow. It causes more death than what would happen if we actually just surrendered to this process. And again, when we recognize that these shadow qualities are playing out in our sacred service, we then open up our vision. We open up to the full scope of what is occurring. We recognize, okay, so I have an offer that I know is well past its use date. I'm just so attached to it because I'm afraid to feel those primal, raw feelings of death about this. I'm afraid to look at the regrets and actually to see how these regrets actually provide me a wonderful tool to reflect on and to learn from and to recognize. And this is really why I'm so passionate about sharing this with you, because what you're learning here is how to take these ideas or these qualities of the shadow that are conceptually treated as though they are something bad, as something negative, and seeing how actually by your becoming friends with them, you are transforming the way that your sacred service is, the way that you show up in your sacred service, and the way that you are able to live your sacred service. I just love it. I love it. So the way that we are applying this, I want you to think of it much like putting on some, they can be diva goggles or maybe some, nerdy glasses, whatever you want to see, maybe some, what are they? Binoculars or something, some form of goggles. I want you to look at this like a life cycle lens. And as if every single day you are putting your life cycle glasses on, and you are doing this process in order to keep this flow moving. I actually really liked the infinity symbol, because I think that is also really what's happening, because this cyclical experience is everlasting. It is just the way our cosmos works, our nature works, how life works. So every single time you are putting on these goggles, what you're first doing is you're pausing, you are detaching, you are letting go of the limited, finite, egoic perspective, that tunnel vision where I can't see anything other than the invisible, illusory saber-toothed tiger that is this belief that I cannot let go of this idea. And then once we've got those goggles on, then we've opened up, we can see the full scope, and we can see, okay, yeah, I am in this phase here. I am in this, I'm resisting mourning what was. And because I'm resisting this mourning, it's causing all of these new ideas that are waiting there to be scrambled. So what I also want to notice, share with you here, is that these aren't prescriptive, that you can be in multiple phases at once. And this is why it's a really powerful tool to also increase your intuition, because you are applying this level of reflection from these glasses. You're able to see, okay, yes, yeah, I am causing destruction because, I'm actually afraid to birth this baby into the world. And there's this interesting and intimate relationship occurring inside of the death and the birth phase. And when you're using this, you're using your intuition to reflect. And then when you move into that place of acceptance, that is where you are then applying your intelligence, your intuitive intelligence, to trust that what you can actually see through this lens is for your highest good, so that you can restore the right flow and harmony into your cycle. And then what we're doing every time we put these goggles on, we are shifting any stagnation or imbalance. And the more that you do this, especially if you're looking at doing this as a daily practice, but as soon as you recognize, oh, I'm blocked here, I've fallen into that tunnel vision, the stagnation you experience will be less and less. And it restores the balance and flow to the way that you are in your sacred service. So what we are going to do now is we're going to go through a little practice for you to identify which phase you are in. Now, I will be asking you a series of questions throughout this practice. And so I encourage you to stay open to the way that you receive these responses, the way that our intuition communicates with us, or the way that we are able to receive and have this dialogue with our intuition is through our clairs, our dominant clairs. Now, we can either hear, see, feel, or just know, and you will feel it or you will experience it somewhere within your body, because it is coming, your intuition is coming from within you. Now, for me, for example, I am they've all kind of, I'm bilingual now, but when I first started developing my intuition, I was a dominant clairaudient, which is clear hearing. So I would hear my own voice, I would hear words being expressed to me. And one of the reasons that I got confused about it was because I was also clairvoyant. And I thought my clairvoyance was it was primarily clairvoyance and being able to see visions, much like, recalling a memory, and you can see it much like a scene, right? But when I actually was developing this, I realized that I was hearing the words first, but I had this idea that I would be hearing it like I hear someone's voice outside of me. But when I actually tuned into it, I realized that I was hearing it like sort of like in the middle, like if you had an x-axis about here-ish, but you can't see that, but somewhere around this zone inside of my head. And so I just wanted to share that with you so that if you aren't entirely familiar with which sense is your dominant sense for receiving and interacting with your intuition, to stay open and curious about how you receive. Our intuition is instant, and what we're doing when we are developing our intuition and intuitive intelligence is trusting. We are trusting that what we receive is what we are receiving. And if this is something that is new to you, you may have some doubts come in. So just acknowledge that, okay, this is new for me and I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to choose to trust. What I will have you do now is close down your eyes and begin to deepen your breath and just feeling all of that information unraveling as you center yourself and focus on your breath. Breathing in deeply through the nose. And as you exhale out through the mouth, feel your entire body softening into the surface in which you sit. Continuing to focus on your breath, the divine vehicle moves you out of tunnel vision mind, delivers you safely to the endless cosmic intelligence of your heart. Continue to breathe into the space, in through the space of your heart, feeling your breath enter into your heart and exhaling out the back of your heart. Dissolving into that fully open, expanded, golden light of your heart's consciousness. This space, your powerful cosmic heart, is where your intuition resides. It is not anything that comes from outside of you. It exists already within you. This is your true nature. Anything that could happen, could exist, could be, already exists inside of this space. In just a moment, we are going to access and assess your sacred service. Placing 2 fingers or the palm of your hand at the center of your chest, signifying that it is the heart that we wish to commune with. And I invite you to ask silently or out loud, which phase is your sacred service in now? Allow yourself to effortlessly receive this information. You may either hear, see, feel, or just know. And once you have received that information, asking silently or out loud, what shadow qualities am I stuck in? And allow yourself to receive these effortlessly. Asking next, what is the phase calling me in? And once you have received that, gently lowering your hand down to your lap, say thank you in whatever way feels right, perhaps bowing your head, saying thank you out loud to the intelligence of your heart, taking a deep breath, letting it go. And when you are ready, blink open your eyes. I encourage you to journal that experience, writing down which phase you are in, what shadow qualities are showing up, and what is the phase calling your attention. And there are a couple of other questions that you can inquire to support you in coming into that beautiful, flowful state that is the fullest expression of this sacred service life cycle. So I encourage you to really integrate with this practice. The next 5 days, practicing this assessment tool, noticing any changes and reflect on your experience. Now, you can practice this by coming into that beautiful space of your heart, using breath to divert out of that analytical mind and coming into the infinite intelligence that is your heart. And then asking those questions. What phase am I in? What shadow qualities do I need to pay attention to in this moment? What is the phase that I am being called into? And using this as a practice to really support you in directing the actions that you take each day. And I would love to hear your experience, see how this tool supports you in taking that aligned action from the fullest expression of your sacred service. So this is part of the way that I assess the people that I work with. It's an entryway into for me to really get an idea of where they are in their sacred service. So this is a tool that I provide as a introductory way of providing an evaluation. And the way that I deliver this is where you are literally just receiving. It's a way that you are able to uh, have my intuitive intelligence assess and identify where you are in your sacred service. And so what I am really excited to share with you is a couple of programs or not programs, a couple of journeys, rather. It's right in front of me, a couple of journeys of how you can work with me. So storytelling is something that I'm really passionate about, because for me, storytelling is the art of directing consciousness. The stories that we tell ourselves, both consciously and subconsciously, are what create the experience that we are having in this physical material world. There are two options that we really unpack the storytelling in your sacred service. And both of these are centered on both intuitive intelligence training. So for me to support you in developing your own intuitive intelligence, so that ultimately you don't actually need somebody else. You don't need to go outside of you to be able to embody your most sovereign author in your life. We also look at story strategy. Now, story strategy is where we've become streamlined in the way that you are storytelling your sacred service. Storytelling also, just so you are aware, storytelling being marketing. Storytelling is how we share who and what we do, how we do it, and all of the ways that we can transfer and share the story that is our sacred service. And when we're looking at that strategically, we are looking at how to get the most out of your storytelling, so that you're not constantly having to be in that space, constantly creating new story, constantly, putting together story. The workload should be effortless. And so what we're doing is we're becoming strategic, where you're sharing your story, which social media channel, how often, what are you sharing, why are you sharing it, all of these different things we established with a strategy. And then we do the work to actually craft your story. And what happens when you have a story strategy is that you actually get to fully live it. You're not constantly in that labor conception and birth phase. You're actually in that life phase where, all of the stories that you share about your sacred service are what you actually get to live. So there are two ways to experience this. Away there. So we have the 12-week journey, which is 60-minute Zoom sessions spread out over the 12 weeks. So we meet fortnightly inside of a Zoom call, where we are going to work primarily on the energetic stories being told, the subconscious stories that you tell yourself. So, for example, you might have subconscious stories about being seen. You might have subconscious stories about having systems that really support you. You might have subconscious stories about nobody's buying. You might have subconscious stories about I can't be consistent. There's an infinite number of stories that you could have informing the experience that you are living in your sacred service. You also get 6 pre-recorded tutorials specific to the journey that we map out together. So again, this might look different for everyone, depending where you are in your sacred service, but there is a huge range of tutorials that I have archived in my story bank that can support you with how to use a Facebook strategy, how to create an Instagram strategy, how to glam up to show up, how to use particular platforms that I use to streamline my storytelling, so that I'm not constantly having to be in creation mode and I actually get to live and enjoy my service. You also get 6 tailored action emails. So on the off weeks, when we aren't in person together or in Zoom person together, on the off weeks, you'll receive a specific tutorial as well as actions to take within that week. So this work together, it isn't passive, right? You still have to show up for it. You still have to take actions for it in order for you to get the most out of our time together. And you also get 6 bite-sized tailored videos from me. So what we do in our time together is we storyboard 6 social media video stories that you can use as a evergreen type of story bank media. You will then be, as part of the actions that you will need to take, is to pre-record some content. And then I post-produce it into a professional video that you can share on your social media platforms. And so some of the things, the videos that I will generally encourage you to have is, one, an intro. Who are you? Why do people work with you? What are you here to do in the world? Your big vision. Going into really sharing with people what it is, why you were so inspired to be in sacred service. What is the movement or the revolution that you are here to create? And if there's specific formats that you work. So for example, if you are a teacher or you have group courses, for example, we can have a look at tailoring the way that you can have a universal type video that you can include in the storytelling of your group classes or your one-on-ones. So there's six options, six videos that you get. And when we go through the process of mapping out how that might look for you, that's where we would establish what type of videos are more appropriate for you. So that's for $2,000. Then we have the 16-week journey, which is a much more in-depth, intensive process. So we are meeting once a week for 2 hours. And in those sessions, we are generally doing both energetic storytelling as well as practical, taking practical steps. It was 11 plus, but I have been adding to that. So you get any pre-recorded tutorials as a archived library that you can have lifelong access to. You get the 6 bite-sized video story, again, tailored to the needs of your service, and on-the-go Voxer support, so that you have that ongoing support throughout the time that we are working together. And that one you can access for $7,000. Now, the application process is by interview. It is an intensive way of working. What I'm asking is, and the way that I like to work is to really, there's a lot of in there that is designed to agitate the shadows so that you can fully know yourself, so that you can fully come into your power by no longer having those hidden shadows that we all tend to run away from and sweep under the rug. So this work is intensive, and so it is via interview only. And in that interview process, what we're doing is we are both information gathering. I have a series of questions that I ask you so that I can qualify that I am the right fit to support you, and that to qualify whether you are the right person to work with me, because I do have a specific requirement that you are fearless in the actions that you take, and that you do take action on the work that we cultivate together. And what we're doing in this process is we're establishing resonance, where we're seeing if there is this energetic connection, and you will feel it. I will feel it, and we'll know as soon as we are inside of that space together if this is right for us. And that being said, we'll also know if it's not right, where the energy doesn't feel like a match, perhaps for right now, or whatever the case. But we will both have established that by coming into this process. Then we also are going to be drafting a journey. So based off of the information that you share with me, I can then see exactly how I can be of best service to you. And after that, what I do is then I go away and I put together a proposal, and I will then share that with you. And there is space for you to then consider it and use your intuition and your intuitive intelligence to, recognize exactly if this is the right thing for you. And again, remembering intuition and intuitive intelligence is that trust factor. So if your intuition is saying, yeah, you need to do this, even though it's scary, when you are embodying your intuitive intelligence, you are trusting that your intuition is guiding you into a space of your absolute highest potential. And then we can have a clarity call. If you still have some questions or if you still want to clarify anything, that's where we would catch up again. Otherwise, if you are ready and guns blazing to get going, then you would accept an offer. I would send you through a contract, and then we start the scheduling process. So that is how you can apply. It is a beautiful way that we can really see if this is the right process for you. We can see where you sort of are leaning into as far as if it's the 12-week or the 16-week intensive, if you do need that extra support. That is it for this evening's workshop. We covered a lot. So I encourage you to take 5 minutes after this to do some reflection in a journal and just, write whatever you have taken away from this. Reflect on what you've learned, what you knew before, what was new information, perhaps something that was challenging, and adapt a really good practice to reflect and increase your intuitive intelligence through that process. Our next workshop is on the 8th of June at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to be looking at the same life cycle, but with specific archetypes who are the caretakers of these phases in your life. This is going to be an extension and a development, or an expansion, rather, that's the word that I'm looking for, on what we've learnt this evening, but in an even more juicy way. I love archetypes. If you haven't figured that out yet, you will the more that we hang out. They are just such a powerful way that we can really live a fullest expression in this life, is by really harnessing the power of archetypes. And so there are 13 sacred archetypes that you will be introduced to, and you will specifically, intimately meet with 4 of them. So I look forward to having you there. The recording will be sent out tomorrow, and you will have reminder emails coming up in preparation of the next workshop. I also encourage you, so in the recording email, there is an integration quiz. So that's just to help those synapses and neurons to really continue to develop. I would love to hear from you. There is an email that will go out in a couple of days, and there is a survey to reflect and recognize inside of that death phase, how I can refine my processes. So please, I'd really, really appreciate it if you can take a couple of extra minutes out of your time to go through that survey. And yeah, that is it from me this evening. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing how this process works for you, and I will see you very, very soon. Okay, if you are wanting to apply as well, please send me a message or send me back an email in response to this recording, and I'll send you a link to book you in for your application interview. Okay, that's it.